step into the world of history. Will Edwin unite the seven kingdoms? Will he find his lost love, and will he avenge his father's death? Stay with us for Episode 4, Snow, Blood, and Promise. The shadow of darkness. It was the last hour of the night. Silence lay heavy over the castle's towers. A storm raged in Edwin's heart. The soldiers were busy with preparations for the journey the next day, but his mind was tied to one thought: tomorrow's road. And what would come after? He climbed the tower and found Ella standing there, looking up at the sky. In the moonlight, her face seemed as if light itself had taken human form. Edwin moved closer quietly. Ella did not turn. In a soft voice she said, "Tomorrow you leave, chasing the dream of uniting 7 kingdoms. But my heart says this road will be full of fire and blood." After a long pause, Edwin replied, "Yes, the journey will not be easy. But it must be taken. If I do not try, the generations after us will live the same wars that have already destroyed our land." Ella took a deep breath and asked quietly, "And if you do not return?" Edwin stepped forward and stood close to her. "Even then my dream will live. Because you will be here. Your prayers will travel with me. You are the light that guides me through darkness." Tears shimmered in Ella's eyes. In a trembling voice she said, "My prayer is that God keep you safe. But promise me one thing, Edwin, never fight alone. Always trust your companions." Edwin took her hand. "I promise. And when I return, this land will not remain a dream. It will be reality, a united kingdom." Ella closed her eyes and bowed her head. "And I will live to see that day." The journey begins. The next morning, when everyone was ready, the first sunbeams turned the sky golden. Ella stood at the castle gate. Edwin mounted his horse, looked back for a moment, and saw Ella raise her hands in prayer. In that instant, Edwin felt a voice inside him say, "This is the most precious moment of my life." The convoy moved out. The sound of horses' hooves echoed through the valleys. Ahead lay a long road and an endless line of dangers. Through mountains and forests, the path narrowed. Tall trees spoke with the sky and let little light through their branches. Birds would suddenly cry out and then fall silent, as if announcing a coming storm. Commander Circe rode close and said, "This forest swallows outsiders." "I want to see your courage, Edwin." Edwin smiled. "Courage? I have it wrapped in my chest. As long as Ella's prayers are with me, no darkness frightens me." During the journey, enemy scouts tried to ambush them several times, but Circe's army repelled them each time. Edwin's sword moved now with firmer skill than before. With every battle he grew stronger. The danger remains. One night, seated around the campfire, Commander Circe said in a deep voice, "Remember, Edwin, this is only the beginning. The real fight is yet to come. When you go to persuade the other kingdoms, the enemy will throw his full strength at you." Edwin looked up at the stars. "I am ready," he said. "This dream is mine, and I will not leave it unfinished." The Valley Trap. Few days later, the convoy reached a narrow valley. Tall mountains rose on both sides, and snow still clung to the peaks. The air carried a mixture of cold and damp. Edwin held the reins and said quietly, "Why is this place so silent?" Commander Circe nodded. "Because the enemy often lies in wait here. They rain arrows from above, and the army below becomes helpless." No sooner had he finished than a sharp whistle split the air. Moments later, a shower of arrows came down. The soldiers were thrown into confusion. Horses panicked. Edwin shouted, "Shields up! Form a wall!" The army immediately locked shields together and made an iron roof. Arrows struck and rang against it. Even amid the noise, Edwin's voice cut through. "Now forward! Take aim!" His archers dropped to their knees and fired at the mountain tops. In a few minutes, screams came from above. Many enemy soldiers tumbled down the cliffs. Circe laughed loudly. "Well done, Edwin. You broke the valley's trap. But remember, the road ahead will be even harder." The mysterious fortress beyond the valley, the convoy reached a wide plain. In its center, a ruined fortress stood. Moss clung to its walls. Its towers were broken, yet its silence was frightening. Serena said nervously, "I don't like this fortress. Its silence feels like a warning of a coming storm." Edwin put his hand on the hilt of his sword. "We must pass through. If it is a trap, we will break it." The gate stood half open. Commander Sursa ground his teeth. "This is the enemy's bait. They want us inside," Edwin answered in a determined tone. "Then we will go in and finish their game inside their own walls." Lorcan's return. The gate creaked as it opened. Darkness, the smell of rotten wood, and an oppressive quiet frightened everyone. As light spread through the corridor, old carvings appeared on the walls, scenes of slain soldiers, fallen horses, rivers of blood. Suddenly the sound of slow clapping echoed from the depths of the fortress. Everyone stepped back. From the darkness a tall, broad figure emerged, dressed in black, his eyes glowing like red coals. "Edwin, you have finally come to my fortress," he said. It was Lorcan, the warlord everyone thought dead. Edwin struck his sword on the ground and said, "If you live, this fortress will be your last prison." Lorcan laughed, his voice rolling against the stones. "You want to unite 7 kingdoms? Child, first learn to save your companions. This fortress will be your graves." At that moment, torches flared along the walls. From every tower, Lorcan's soldiers poured out. Their eyes glowed red, and their armor was black. Serena's voice trembled. "These are not ordinary soldiers. They are slaves of the darkness." Edwin raised his sword. "The dream of 7 kingdoms is difficult, but not impossible. Forward!" Steel rang out through the fortress. The battle was about to begin. The madness of the fortress, the flash of swords, turned the fortress darkness into day for a fleeting moment. The clash of steel echoed so fiercely that the great hall seemed to tremble. Edwin looked toward his soldiers. Their eyes carried that same fire one sees in men placed under a severe trial. Serena gripped her weapon tightly, though her hands trembled. Odric wiped the blackened blood from his arm with a torn cloth. But he stood firm, silent, his calm a kind of courage in itself. Lorcan's soldiers attacked in a perfectly coordinated wave. Their blows were heavy, ruthless, meant to shatter stone walls if needed. Edwin spun his sword in a wide arc and hurled 2 attackers backward. Then a towering soldier lunged at him. Edwin pivoted, deflected the strike and blocked with his shoulder. Metal clanged against metal, and sparks curled upward like streaks of smoke. A few steps away, Lorcan stood watching with a cruel smirk. There was no joy in his smile, only the arrogance of a man who thought victory inevitable. He raised his arm and shouted an order that echoed across the hall. Some soldiers stepped back, and a poison-tipped arrow was released. It wasn't an ordinary arrow. Its shaft was coated in a strange black liquid. When it gleamed mid-air, Edwin felt an icy shiver spread through his chest. Suddenly a scream rose from behind Serena. She stumbled and fell. Edwin's heart froze. He turned and saw a deep wound bleeding across her shoulder. Odric dragged her behind a broken pillar, but the gash was bad. Edwin motioned for her to stay sheltered, then turned back to the line. Harold, swinging a heavy axe, smashed through the enemy's left flank and shouted, "Forward! Strike fear into their hearts." His cry reignited the troops' spirit. The soldiers advanced again, disciplined and fierce, pressing Lorcan's men back for a moment. But Lorcan reacted swiftly. He pushed open a hidden door near the gate, and from narrow passageways his guards began to emerge behind Edwin's line. That was the moment Edwin understood. This battle wasn't only of strength, but of wit. He signaled to Serena, who managed to nod weakly. Odric caught the cue and dashed toward the upper beams. He swung his sword at the wooden supports, breaking a section of the ceiling. Heavy debris crashed down, throwing several enemies off balance. Confusion spread through Lorcan's ranks, and Edwin seized the chance. Then Lorcan himself stepped forward, only 2 steps between them. His eyes were as cold as a mountain peak buried in snow. "You have courage, Edwin," he said mockingly. "But courage alone is no gold mine. It needs the furnace of wisdom to be forged." Edwin's eyes narrowed. "You call cruelty power," he answered. But true power is the strength to protect others. For a brief moment, their words silenced the chaos around them. Then Lorcan struck, fast, merciless. Edwin met the blow. The swords locked and screeched. They circled, close enough that their breaths mingled in the cold air. In that close combat, Edwin slipped a dagger from behind his sword and thrust it beneath Lorcan's arm. Lorcan roared in pain, but countered instantly, his blade grazing Edwin's shoulder. The burn of metal cut deep, but Edwin didn't retreat. Instead, he stepped closer to his horse, turned his stance, and pulled the fight back toward his men. The battle raged on, victory leaning one way, then the other. There was blood, smoke, and screams that echoed behind the haze. The fortress walls seemed to bear witness to the storm that had engulfed them that night. At last, Lorcan stepped back and shouted to his men, "Retreat! We will meet again!" His army pulled away, their armor clattering into the dark. A sudden stillness fell over the fortress hall. The floor was scattered with bodies, some dead, most wounded, all exhausted. But Edwin's soldiers were alive, and that survival itself felt like a small victory. What Edwin carried from that battle was more than blood and pain. A new truth had taken root in his heart. The enemy was not just outside. Betrayal, deceit, and fear lived within as well. And men like Lorcan fought not only with strength but with cunning. Edwin gathered his remaining soldiers. Serena, pale and wounded, drew a long breath, but her eyes were sharp again. She had realized that to win this war, they needed more than swords. In the quiet of the night, Edwin said softly, "We've passed today's test, but this victory is temporary. Lorcan will return, and perhaps not alone. He might have those with him who already know our secrets. We must make our plans stronger than ever." Harold placed a hand on his shoulder. "My lord, your leadership kept us alive." Ordric bowed his head and said, "We are with you, wherever you go." That night, silence filled the fortress hall. It was the silence that follows battle, a mixture of relief and the uneasy realization that harder trials lie ahead. The next morning, a hidden message. When morning light filtered through the tall windows, Edwin noticed scattered papers across the floor, maps, letters, and sketches. One letter caught his eye. The same symbol repeated again and again, a dagger drawn beside a strange slogan. Edwin recognized it. It was the same mark he had seen on the necks of fallen enemies during earlier attacks. He picked up the letter and read. The words were short, but heavy with meaning. "In Circe, any outsider who speaks of unity must first be tested. Those unworthy must flee or die. If he stands firm, then act as the king commands." At the bottom of the letter was a name, smeared and unreadable, as if deliberately erased. The discovery sent a chill through Edwin. It meant two things. Lorcan was not alone, and there were forces within Circe itself working against unity. The danger was no longer distant. It was already among them. His chest tightened with resolve. The enemy was not only at the gates, but inside the walls. Edwin spoke firmly. "We must gather information immediately. There may still be those within this fortress we can trust." "We must find them first," Commander Circe asked. "And if we find none trustworthy?" Edwin's eyes hardened. "Then we will build our own strength, one that no traitor can shake." Nightfall, the birth of a plan. That night, while the fortress slept, Edwin gathered a handful of trusted men. He sent them into the inner city, narrow alleys, taverns, and temples, to quietly ask about a traveler from the northern valleys, a man who spoke of unity among the kingdoms. It was a dangerous mission. Circe's streets had many eyes, and any one of them could belong to a spy. But Edwin knew that no great change ever came from silence. It required motion born of patience, intelligence, and sacrifice. As his men slipped away into the darkness, Edwin looked down at his sword. There was a quiet weight in that moment, the kind a man feels when standing on the edge of a mountain. Seeing how far he's come and how much he might still lose, he murmured, "By morning, the truth will reveal itself, as friend or as foe, and somewhere deep within the walls of Circe, in the heavy silence of night, A new conspiracy was already taking shape, one that would test Edwin's resolve and the loyalty of every soul who followed him. Behind the castle walls. The third watch of the night had settled over Castle Cirsa. The air was still, and cold wind whistled through the cracks in the stone walls, making the torches flicker. But Edwin's eyes were far from sleep. He sat cleaning his sword, though his thoughts had drifted beyond the battle itself. The enemy isn't outside. "He's inside," he murmured. Ordric, sitting nearby, looked up sharply. "What do you mean, my lord?" Edwin stopped polishing the blade and spoke quietly. "I mean Lorcan's strength comes from within these walls. Someone here has been feeding him our plans. Someone betrayed our route." Harold clenched his fists. "If that's true, that man won't live long." Edwin exhaled deeply. "Not yet. We need to know who it is first. The market of Cirsa the next day." Edwin wrapped himself in a rough cloak, smeared dust across his face, and slipped past the castle guards into the city market. Cirsa's market was a strange sight. Rows of wooden huts, stone pathways dusted with frost, traders shouting over the noise, and hides of frozen animals hung beside coins of rare metal. At one corner, he noticed an old woman selling charms. She looked straight into his eyes and said, "Traveler, there are dreams in your eyes, but your shadow carries a burden." Edwin frowned. "Do you know me?" The old woman smiled. "I don't read faces. I read fates, and yours is tied to the castle walls. Someone waits for you there, but not as a friend." Edwin said nothing. He dropped a coin in her wrinkled hand and walked away, but a strange unease settled in his heart. The secret chamber, by dusk, Edwin had returned to the castle. He called for the commander of Cirsa and said, "Show me the old part of the fortress, the one sealed after the last war." The commander looked puzzled. "But there's nothing there now, only empty rooms." "Then we'll see for ourselves." They descended the spiral stairs, torches in hand. The air grew colder, thick with the scent of damp stone and dust. At the end of a corridor stood a rotting wooden door. When they opened it, a gust of icy air swept through. Beyond it stretched a narrow hallway, its walls stained with dark ancient marks. "This," said the commander quietly, "was where prisoners were once kept." Edwin stopped, his eyes fixed on a symbol carved into the far wall, a dagger beneath a crown, the same mark he had seen on Lorcan's letters. "That's impossible," he whispered. The commander turned to him. "You recognize it?" Edwin's voice hardened. "It's the mark of betrayal. And someone inside this fortress bears it at the moment of unmasking." That night, Edwin set a trap. He ordered the guards to switch their posts at random. Every soldier would sleep in a different tent and patrol a different route. "Why?" Ordric asked. Edwin replied, "Because the traitor is among us. If we change everyone's place, he'll expose himself." The night passed under a heavy, cold sky. The moon hid behind clouds. Around the first hour after midnight, Edwin heard it. A faint sound near the back gate. A shadow moved stealthily toward the wall. Edwin signaled. Ordric and Harold split off and circled around quietly. The figure crouched near the gate, placing something on the ground. A small, glowing stone. The kind used for sending signals. "Stop, right there!" Edwin shouted. The figure froze, then bolted. Ordric lunged, tackling him to the ground. They struggled briefly until Edwin reached them and tore the mask away. Everyone froze. It was one of Cirsa's own guards, the same man who had been traveling with Edwin's unit for days. His lips curled into a poisonous grin. "Who sent you?" Edwin demanded. The man spat and hissed, "By the command of Lorcan's king." "He knows every move you make, Edwin." Edwin raised his sword, fury flashing in his eyes, but the commander of Cirsa stepped forward. "No," he said firmly. "Keep him alive. He'll lead us to the rest." The judgment at dawn. The traitor was brought before the court of Cirsa. Soldiers lined the hall. Frost clung to the stone pillars and the air was thick with tension. Edwin spoke first. "This man is not just a traitor. He's a message. If one soldier can be bought, an entire kingdom can fall." King Cirsa, seated upon his throne, said coldly, "We'd heard of Lorcan's schemes, but we didn't know he'd already crept into our walls." Then he turned to Edwin. "You've opened our eyes, and for that you have our gratitude." Edwin bowed slightly. "I only did what was necessary. But this war is far from over. Lorcan isn't just a man, and he's an idea. And to defeat that idea, the 7 kingdoms must stand under one banner." The hall fell silent. Then the king rose, drew his sword and drove it into the stone floor before the throne. "From this day, Circe stands with you. You have our allegiance, Edwin." For a moment, Edwin looked up at the sky beyond the tall windows. The sun had risen, its golden light spreading over the castle walls. It felt as though a crack had opened in the darkness. A new resolve that night when the castle lay quiet. Edwin stood alone upon the wall. The air was sharp with the scent of snow, but fire burned within his chest. He whispered into the cold wind, "Ila, I've kept the first promise. But the path isn't over yet. 1 kingdom stands with me. 6 more are waiting." And as his words carried across the frozen mountains, it felt as though fate itself had paused to listen. The story was far from over. The real war had only just begun. Snow, blood, and promise. The wind howled across the fortress walls. The land of Circe lay buried under the weight of snow. From the mountain peaks, icy gusts descended, whispering the warning of an oncoming storm. Edwin stood upon the fortress rampart, looking out over the vast frozen plain below. For a moment, it felt as if the entire world had fallen silent. Harold came up behind him. "Commander, the soldiers say the snowstorm might last 3 days. If we stay here, our food will run out." Edwin spoke quietly, his voice steady despite the cold. "If the food runs out, we'll survive. But if our spirit breaks, we'll lose everything." Then he gathered his guards around him. "We stand with Circe, but this land will test us. Every soldier must conquer the storm within his heart before he can face the one outside." The poisoned night fell. A dim candle flickered in one of the fortress chambers. Edwin had set his sword aside and was studying a map with Audric. "The next tribe, Druin, is 3 days from Circe," Edwin said. "That's where the Cold King rules. If he joins us, we'll have the power of the north on our side." Audric frowned. "But to reach him, we must cross the frozen plains. Few who enter ever return." Edwin smiled faintly. "Then we'll be among the few who do." Just then, a soldier rushed in, breathless. "Commander." One of the guards collapsed. The food was poisoned. A chill ran down Edwin's face. "Where did the food come from?" "From the town market, sir. The same old woman you spoke to gave it to us." A sharp unease struck Edwin's heart. He hurried downstairs. A guard lay on the floor, trembling. Edwin knelt, pressing snow against the man's lips, but it was too late. The soldier gasped his final words. "I saw someone leaving through the hidden gate, wearing your clothes." And then he was gone. Edwin whispered, his jaw tight. "The enemy has lost their sword, but they still carry poison." The enemy beneath the snow. The next night, Edwin set watch outside the fortress walls. The wind carried strange noises through the night. Harold leaned closer. "That sound isn't the wind. Those are footsteps." Edwin raised his torch high. Far in the distance, shadows moved over the snow, silent but swift. "Enemies!" Edwin shouted. In an instant, swords were drawn and torches flared. Lorcan soldiers burst out from beneath the snow. Attacking the fortress gates, Edwin lifted his blade toward the sky. "This fortress doesn't belong to those who fight with deceit." The battle ignited. Blood splattered across the snow. Edwin fought forward, striking down one enemy, then another. Harold shouted, "Commander!" "They know the inner path." Edwin roared back, "That means the traitor is still among us." The fight raged for 2 hours before the invaders finally retreated, but 20 of Circe's men had fallen. After dawn at sunrise, the fortress was silent. Edwin placed a hand on the shoulder of a wounded soldier sitting by a beam. "We didn't win this battle. We just survived it." King Circe approached him. "Edwin, we saw how your enemies struck, but your courage lit a fire in our hearts." "Circe is now your fortress." Edwin shook his head. "This fortress belongs to all who shed their blood on this snow. But we must move on. This war isn't over yet. The departure a few days later, when the storm eased, Edwin prepared his caravan. Each horse was loaded with supplies and weapons. The people of Circe stood on the walls as their king placed a hand on Edwin's shoulder. "This land will forever." "Tell your story," the king said. "If you ever return, Circe will be your home." Edwin smiled softly. "I will return, but only when the 7 kings sit at one table." He gripped his horse's reins, and for a moment the image of Isla crossed his mind, as if she were watching him from a distant window. "I will come back," he whispered. The caravan moved forward through the snow. The sun had not yet fully risen. Behind the mountains, a thin line of light appeared, a promise of new hope. The final oath as the fortress of Circe faded behind him. Edwin turned for one last look. The icy winds lashed against his face, but a spark burned bright in his eyes. Harold asked, "Commander, where is our next stop?" Edwin replied, "Beyond this ridge lies the land of the Cold King. There the snow is harsher than any enemy, but our purpose is greater than the cold." He looked up at the sky and said, "As long as it stays blue, I will not break my promise." Circe was only the beginning. Now it's time to awaken the kingdoms. The caravan disappeared into the white horizon, and the story moved forward toward a new chapter of fate, war, and unity. Thank you for staying with us. In the next chapter, Edwin and Ila's story takes a new turn. Don't go anywhere. The two will meet again very soon. Subscribe, like, and share the channel so we can keep bringing you more untold stories from history.